Hello everyone and welcome to our week 3 videos for social psych. So for this week we're going to be talking about two interrelated concepts: person perception and the way that we strategically present ourselves to other people. And one very important bit of context for this that I'm going to talk about here and that you'll also see in your textbook is the idea that when we're trying to understand the social world, we often take a lot of cognitive shortcuts. This is really rooted in the idea that as human beings, or honestly like any living thing, we try to save cognitive energy when we can. Almost all of us, if given the opportunity, would rather have things be cognitively easy, to feel like we easily understand something without having to expend a whole ton of energy. And so that loops back around to social perception, in the sense that generally, not always, but generally, we try to understand the social world in ways that are, first off, quick and efficient, that don't lead us to waste a whole ton of mental effort. We also want to be reasonably accurate, so we are not trying to be wildly wrong in terms of understanding who other people are, right? It's more adaptive if we have a reasonably realistic and accurate understanding. But we don't go overboard on accuracy if it's at the cost of efficiency. And finally, all things being equal, we generally try to understand the social world in ways that leave us feeling good about ourselves. So, we're talking about mental shortcuts. I want you all to think about your days, the days you've had so far. Some of you are probably at the start of your day, some of you are towards the end, some of you have maybe had many classes. If you think back, do you recall any instances where you took a mental shortcut? So this could mean a lot of different things. This could be, for instance, hopping out of bed in the morning and choosing an outfit that you had already worn last week, rather than going through every single shirt or every pair of pants that you own and really selecting the truly optimal outfit for the day. Instead, you take that shortcut, you go for the thing that's easy that you've already done before. A mental shortcut could be maybe you were listening to a friend or a family member and you kind of tuned out halfway through what they were saying because you felt like you already had the gist. That would be a mental shortcut. Or maybe you met a new student today, a new classmate at Dickinson, and you made some quick judgments about the kind of person that they are without actually learning every detail of their personality, their biography, their past history. That would also be a mental shortcut. Now, when we're talking about social cognition, there are a couple of types of mental shortcuts that really stand out. Kind of special categories, the ones that have the biggest impact, the ones that appear the most frequently. If you'd like a little bit more detail on these other general kinds of cognitive heuristics, I'm going to point you towards two YouTube videos that you can check out. We, for this video, are going to be focusing on another kind of cognitive shortcut that's more in the social domain. And this is the fundamental attribution error. So to get us started on this, I want you to think about the last time that somebody was pretty rude to you. So next, I want you to develop your best guess as to why this person was rude to you. All right, so let's turn the tables. What's the last time you remember being pretty rude to somebody else? And once you've thought of that scenario, do you remember why you were rude? Okay. If you are like 60 to 70% of people, if you are like most of the students who have been in my past social psych classes, when you were thinking about somebody else being rude, your explanations for why they did that were what we would call dispositional. You attributed it to something about them as a person. Their personality, like being introverted, them maybe being mean or having bad intentions or just straight up being a jerk, right? Something about them that stays with them, that is long-lasting. And when you were thinking about yourself, you were probably a lot less likely to say, I'm just an a-hole, right? You probably thought about extenuating features of the situation you were in. I was short with that person because I was in a rush. I was mean because this person had already previously done something to offend me. And this is called the fundamental attribution error. There's a really persistent tendency that when we are looking at other people and trying to make interpretations of their behavior, we really overestimate the contribution of their personality, their traits, their values, personal factors. And we don't really account, at least we don't account sufficiently, for the pressures of the situation that they're in. When we're looking at our own behavior, we tend to do a pretty good job of being aware of how the situation was affecting us in that moment. And so if there's this really kind of asymmetric, kind of obvious unfairness, this obvious disconnect between how we perceive other people versus how we perceive ourselves, why do we keep doing it? Well, there's at least a couple of reasons. So one that I'm going to offer is that this actually helps us to feel like we understand other people and that we can predict the world around us. And we like this, right? We like certainty and predictability. Now, why does the FAE help us to predict? Well, if you think that one behavior can tell you something lasting about someone's personality, then you know what to expect from them in the future. So take the example of if you're a second or third or fourth year student, when you first met your hallmates at Dickinson. If you are currently a first year student, maybe think about the group chats that you've been having with other students. You probably pretty quickly came to some judgments about the people you were meeting. Like, let's say you're in one of these group chats and one of your classmates is super bubbly, always has something to say, seems really extroverted. It's probably kind of nice to think, you know what, I've got that person figured out. They're going to be one of the big social butterflies. I can count on that person to be the person who throws the parties. It's a little bit less reassuring to think, well, I really have no idea whether this says something about their true personality. Maybe they're only extroverted in, virtual conversations. Or maybe they're only extroverted when it's the first week of classes. That doesn't give you a lot to go off of, right? A potential second reason, situations, the pressures affecting someone's behavior are often invisible. I don't mean literally invisible, like see-through. I mean that they're maybe outside of your awareness. You wouldn't have a reason to notice them. So let's take an example of you sitting with a friend or acquaintance, and they're doing something so annoying, they won't get off their phone. And so you make the dispositional attribution. You assume that this person is not that nice, kind of a jerk. You might not be aware that the reason that they are constantly refreshing their phone is they're actually waiting for a yes or no decision on an application to a master's program at their top choice university, right? They've applied to MBA programs and they're desperately waiting to hear back. And oftentimes, like with this situation, we have no way of knowing what's on someone's mind that might be generating their behavior. And finally, sometimes we have the information we need to make that situational adjustment, and we fail to use this. This would be like the situation where someone is a little bit short with you, they use kind of an abrupt tone of voice, but then they also explain right afterwards that they're really in a rush and they have somewhere they need to be. Most of the time, we'll actually use that information if it's right there staring us in the face. But there are some circumstances when we are tired, when we are stressed, when we are under the influence of some kind of intoxicating substance, when our cognitive capacities are not at 100%, we can have that information available to us and not take it into account. So, one of the things that this suggests is that when you have the option of attributing behavior to the person or the situation, when you could make that person level attribution or that situation attribution, the person level attribution probably happens first, cognitively in our neurology, right? That is something that happens quickly, easily, effortlessly. You can be really tired and really distracted, and if you see someone acting in a jerky way, you'll think that they're usually a jerk. But next, it seems like the next step is we then have to account for the influence of the situation. You have to then notice that they are in a rush and then make the appropriate adjustment about whether or not their behavior really reflects them being a jerk. What I'd like to leave you with is the following question. I'd like you to think about the situations you encounter throughout your everyday life and brainstorm some ways that you think the fundamental attribution error might affect how you perceive other people. And if you think of some really good examples and you feel so inspired, please bring this to our next Zoom session together. All right, I'll see you in the next video.